Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another animation breakdown. Today we have Honkai Impact 3rd Reburn. I was told that this one was not a story-based one and is just kind of a thing that the team decided to throw together. I'm gonna assume that that's true. I don't know any better. I looked at a list of all the animations they'd put out and I was just like, let's see if I could do these in some sort of a rough order. I know up to this point I've done two random ones that were not in order at all, but I figure if I'm gonna be starting to do more of these, I might as well just do them in order, right? So without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? Let's go. And of course, as per usual, I'll be doing a breakdown after this, so look forward to me picking it apart. Ooh. Okay. This is already cool. I like What'd you do, miss? There's so much to look at. I'm trying to think of things to say, but I'm just paying attention. All right. That was really short, sweet, to the point, wasn't it? Okay. I do have things to talk about, though, so let's get right over to the breakdown section, shall we? So before getting into this, I want to preface that I am a 2D animator by trade. I'm not really that experienced in 3D CG stuff. While I do understand it in a broad sense, I don't know some of the techniques directly that they use for stuff like this. So stuff that's especially leaning more in the game development end of things, how they handle certain shots and stuff, I might not know perfectly what's going on. So I'm just going to theorize more than anything else and see if I can't guess to the best of my abilities and kind of play around with my own thoughts about how they would be done. All right, so this first shot here, I really like how this is done. I'm not entirely positive, but I have a feeling that all of these individual things on screen here, all of these bottles and such, and of course the big dude's hand, I assume they're all animated separately by hand so they can kind of utilize the splines in a 3D animation program to adjust for time and kind of warp that to the proper speed that's needed here. And I think that that's really a clever use. I'm not entirely sure how they handle handled this like purple haze around. I assume that they just put the character into a different composition entirely, or they utilize just the Z-axis, they put her on top of everything else, and just let everything else underneath it be as it is without affecting anything. I really liked how they handled this as well with this pop can. I assume that there's an ability for this character where things she interacts with will come into her own speed, and that's why they decided to show it here. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, but I really do like how they have the whole frozen trail that's like slowly disappearing even in front of the things she's touching, as if it's like anything directly connected or from this source gets kind of scooped up along with it. That's just super fun. And of course, as she goes in for this drink here, I think it's a really clever idea. I assume that they probably just did this shot and she was standing here with no movement, and then somebody was like, that's really boring, we have to liven this up somehow. And that's why they gave her the Adam's apple movement, because once the tassels on her hoodie are done moving, there's no other movement happening on screen, and that would be really boring to look at. Alright, this shot here of her running, I do think that this looks pretty good. The posing is well done. I like that the shoulders are rotated back. It is a little bit stiff. I would prefer there to be a little bit more shoulder movement, because when you run, you have a lot of physical kinetic energy that's moving, and your shoulders wouldn't be quite so stiff and boxy. But of course, I do understand the limitations of time and resources. They may not have just gotten the chance to, but I personally would have made that a little bit more bouncy, a little bit more lively. Right here, we have a hidden cut. I just talked about these in the video from yesterday. You assume that it's all one shot because that's the point, but there are hidden cuts all over the place, especially in projects like this where there is a 3D rendered background, a set piece that you have to work within the bounds of. You're not making the whole thing, you're making a chunk of it to save time and resources, etc. And you have to move the characters around it to make it feel reasonably realistic. So she was probably getting really close to the end of their existing set piece, and they had to find a way to kind of fix that and set her back a little bit further. So they probably did that right here at this frame, where it is now a different spot farther back from where she was just running from, and they decided to set her back there and start the camera again and utilize that pillar as a transition spot. Very clever, very classic. I also like little characterization things like this. Usually they don't need to be done, but I like it when they are done because it adds a little bit of spice to the visuals. This shot of her just pulling up her hoodie to block her mouth to keep the dust out. It's not something you have to do, but it's something that really does change how people watch the sequence. It does matter, and it's nice to see when people utilize that extra time to put in that extra bit of effort. Alright, in this sequence, for those of you who have watched this before, you might know what I'm going to be talking about already, but I'm going to be talking about the boob jiggle. They didn't have to put boob jiggle here, but I'm sure this was an instance of them just going, we know our audience, we better have some boob jiggle, gotta have that fan service. It's not really necessary because presumably this outfit is fairly skin tight, and there probably wouldn't be all that much to be jiggling around in there. There's not a lot of freedom, but I'll give it to them. You know, you got to know your audience. You got to put in little things like that to make the eyes go ooga booga. And this little bit right here, I just wanted to talk while it's playing. I like their use. They did this a lot in the prior animation too of 3D space. They utilized the camera so well, and just having the character be followed through that 3D space, it's a very, very good use of that. I think the only studio I've seen that do even comparably well is like Studio Orange in the anime scene. For those who don't know the studio, they've done Land of the Lustrous, Beastars, Trigun Stampede, amongst other things, but they do some of the best 3D CG anime stuff, from the movement to character animation, everything. And they utilize that 3D camera a lot in their sequences too, especially in the action ones for stuff like Trigun Stampede. And here's that other transition I was talking about earlier, that other like quick transition. It's not the one where she disappears here, because obviously that does happen. These feathers appear out of the explosion. It's just like, oh, a bunch of feathers. Where is she? Is she safe? But I like that they use the feathers to change to a completely different shot right here. In the motion, you're watching all these feathers. It's a bunch of noise on screen. You're really not noticing it, but it's just a hard cut to a completely different shot. All the feathers are in different locations. It's a different simulation entirely, but it doesn't matter because in motion, it feels good. I've also talked about this in my last Honkai breakdown. I believe what they're doing here is an homage to the Atano Circus. I did a little bit of explanation on what the Atano Circus is in the last video, so if you want more detail on that, by all means, go and watch that video as well. There will be plenty more to talk about what an Etano Circus is there, but I believe that this is just another way of them paying homage to that. It's a very obvious visual thing. It could not be an Etano Circus, but I believe it is just by the way it looks and the way it's handled. And also while I'm here, I want to give this a little bit of a highlight. These explosions look very good in universe. To compare them against these flat cel-shaded looking esque animations in the CG space, having these 2D animated explosions with these bright flamboyant colors, very plumy, they have like a mushroom look to them. They're very flat as well. They're also shaded to kind of look like that cartoony cell shading. It's very nice to see them really pay attention to those visual styles, because there are some animations I've seen where they don't do that and it really does clash. So it's nice when they really put that thought into the visuals. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so very much for watching. If you want to see more of these and support me, by all means do so. You know how to do it, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!